I kind of feel like I've been dropped into a different time and place. Nothing really, I don't have a reference for most of the things around me, so I can't really like gauge what anything is in here.
The layout seems a little confusing. Like, it has a flow to it that's kind of like circular, but at the same time, like, it doesn't provide like a linear progression of what I feel like I should look at, either chronologically or like regionally.
I think that the flow of the objects are somewhat confusing given that I don't have a lot of experience or exposure to African artwork.
It's really interesting. The work of art, it's made of wood, it's made of natural artifact, I guess you'd call it. So definitely from a long time ago.
It definitely seems like very old and tribal, I guess I would describe it as.
It feels ritualistic, so I'm kind of getting the sense that this was used in some sort of tribal event, I would assume.
A lot of African art usually has a function for it.
There's a lot of intricate designs on it of like all the specific like impressions or like dots everywhere in the studs.
I noticed like there's more intricate designs for the head part and the breast part of the sculpture.
Beauty. I mean, representation of womanhood. Yeah. Power, strength.
It seems kind of imposing and powerful, I guess. It seems like something that would be just high up above you, that you just kind of like look down upon you, make you kind of, I don't know, have some sort of semblance that this is worn by someone in power. Very imposing. The eyes kind of like look down on you. It just seems like it just feels very surreal in a sense.
Perhaps a piece of worship, or the thing that really stands out, I think, is like the two kind of like breasts. It really shows you that it's supposed to represent kind of like a female entity.
I think definitely it's the feminine parts are pretty apparent once I saw them. I think at first impression I thought it was like a zebra or something because of the stripes and the legs.
I feel like there's definitely like it kind of gives you like vibes of like femininity and motherhood, but at the same time it kind of looks like a horse, like an animal. So, but it's really beautiful, and I feel like the little details on it really show that like the craftsman who made it was like a really sophisticated artist.
I'm not really sure. There's a lot going on. It looks like sort of a half-human sculpture with what seems like 4 legs, maybe resembling a horse of some sort, but with the sort of human features on the head, with the ears protruding and the eye sockets carved into the head. But with ornate features makes me think it's a little bit different. It's not directly humanoid.
You can definitely get a good sense of the culture that it's representing. I think like I can see it has 4 legs like an animal, but like the head of a human. So it's like some kind of like representing nature maybe.
It's also kind of interesting because obviously African art portrays women very differently than most other art cultures. Sorry. It's not necessarily what I expected. It definitely doesn't look like a traditional mask. It's much, like, not necessarily larger, but the shape is much more unexpected. It definitely makes sense that it's part of a ritual, as most African art is, and that's kind of what my assumption was to begin with. My assumption was not that it was part of a ritual for like the ideal female. It was more of a, not necessarily like a god, but like a thanking ritual, more like thank you, like thanking women as a whole sort of a thing is kind of what I expected. Not necessarily like, oh, I'm looking for this in a female kind of qualities type thing, but I can see like which qualities are more prominent now and why they're more prominent.
I mean, obviously, I'm really curious as to where this came from. What time period is this, and what material it's made from.
So from the label, it's very easy to tell that this was a very important part of the culture, and it said it represented like the sacrifice of motherhood, and so obviously this was an important piece.
I think it's really neat. Obviously, this ceremonial headdress means a lot to whoever was wearing it, and yeah.
It talked about how it was representing the ideal beauty during that time. So just thought how it's interesting how like it also shows like perhaps the difference in culture of now and back then.
I kind of get a better sense for what it's used for. I mean, now that I kind of looking at it, it does make sense that it would be used for like an accentuation of beauty. I can definitely see a little bit more. I can tell those are breasts now. I feel like I'm getting a better sense of exactly what this is used for.
And it also said that in special times that this artifact would be polished to a brass color, which I think would be really interesting because right now we're kind of seeing the remains of that color. And looking at it now, it's still pretty stunning, I'd say. So I'm curious to see what it looks like in its best form, I guess.
Maybe a little bit more like historic context.
I'm not really sure what to make of it. It's a little bit ambiguous, like because there's so many different aspects to it. Maybe like if this is part of like a trend of different works, or maybe like it's made in a certain like popular style. It'd be nice to have some context to the creation. See, I don't expect a museum to put like a 5-page paper on the piece next to it, but I definitely think that I'd be able to appreciate it more if I had more context.
I think the label didn't really describe the full meaning behind the specific designs.
Like what the artist's intent was for like what were they trying to display with this?
I don't know. I feel like the only real way to kind of get the amount of knowledge that I want from this would actually probably be see it in use in some sense.
The full context.
Yeah, the full context of its use.
I think it'd be nice if I had kind of visual aid about how this kind of performance was actually acted out, and maybe it'd be nice to learn about how the museum acquired this piece, because I think it's like extremely important, especially in like the 21st century that we're in, to kind of be aware about how certain pieces of arts are acquired.
I'm used to going to museums and like that being pretty typical of a label, but I've always wished that there was a little bit more text about like, oh, we procured this.
Yeah.
If it's interesting, I'd love to see that. Yeah.
How the museum acquired this piece, because I think that it's a question that is not really kind of asked, or a question that a lot of times the museum don't really feel comfortable answering.
Sort of how this sculpture ended up here in Baltimore.